Ukraine is at war, but instead of sending armies and weapons, the world is using an invisible weapon, something you can't see, but it's powerful. Sanctions. You've probably heard this word thrown around. These are not your usual weapons, but they're basically a way for countries to fight each other economically. There are nearly 15,000 sanctions on Russia, but still its economy is growing. So today, we're going to figure out, why is Russia immune to sanctions?
Severe economic sanctions on Putin and all those folks around him, choking off access to technology as well as cutting off access to the global financial system.
In response to Russia's aggressive war on Ukraine and the illegal annexation of Ukrainian territories, the US, UK, and European Union countries have made some serious moves to cut Russia off from the global financial scene. From financial measures isolating its banks and oligarchs to export restrictions targeting critical industries, the West aimed to cripple the Russian economy and force a change in its behavior. The EU has expanded sanctions which cover nearly 1,950 individuals and entities, with recent additions in December 2023. However, despite these stringent measures, the sanctions haven't fully met their ambitious objective because Putin has found ways to navigate around them using international corruption mechanisms, third-party intermediaries, and exploiting gaps in trade restrictions. So here's how it went down. Russia can't directly buy Western microchips and arms, right? So Russian-linked companies set up subsidiaries worldwide, often in offshore havens or regions with lax regulations. This complex network makes it difficult to trace connections between the end beneficiary and the purchasing company. This approach has allowed sanctioned goods, such as microchips and drones, to reach Russian battlefields. An investigation found components from 1,000 foreign companies in Russian military equipment, presumably acquired illegally. A notable example is the supply of Chinese DJI drones. Even though China didn't participate in sanctioning Russia and pledged not to sell drones to any party involved in Russo-Ukrainian war, the reality is a bit murkier. The flow of Chinese drones into Russia continues, while Ukraine is now cut off from purchasing them. These drones find their way into Russia through sales to third parties with ties to Russia. These intermediaries, operating through obscure entities in the US, Hong Kong, and elsewhere, acquire sanctioned technology. In the past year, China has sold more than $12 million in drones and drone parts to Russia. This setup allows Russia to procure goods more freely from countries that haven't imposed sanctions on it, but are wary of potential Western restrictions if they openly sell technology and dual-use goods to the Kremlin. As a result, companies in China, Hong Kong, and other places can sell their products to Russia without facing repercussions from the US or the EU. The success of Russia's intermediary schemes also hinges on the involvement and complicity of governments in third countries. Kazakhstan is a clear example. Despite officially claiming neutrality in the Russo-Ukrainian war, its trade with Russia tells a different story. Kazakhstan has become a significant channel for the supply of technology exports to Russia and a means to evade Western sanctions. Over the past year, Kazakhstan's imports from the EU surged by 89%, totaling 10.4 billion euros. Meanwhile, in 2022, Kazakhstan saw a notable 25% increase in its exports to Russia, reaching 8 billion euros. Interestingly, almost 1 billion euros of this total went towards tech and machinery goods, even though Kazakhstan isn't the primary producer of these items. According to Kazakh Deputy Prime Minister Serek Zimangarin, some of these goods included at least 104 sanctioned items, including many dual-use products. Surprisingly, Kazakhstan managed to sell 3.3 million euros worth of semiconductor components to Russia last year, a significant jump from the 11,000 euros traded in 2021. Kyrgyzstan and Armenia seem to be playing a similar role in this scenario. Alongside Kazakhstan, these countries collectively lost nearly 1 billion euros worth of goods impacted by EU sanctions, essentially turning them into ghost items. It's quite likely that these goods were later resold to Russia. Interestingly, this pattern extends beyond Central Asia. Turkey and other seemingly neutral Asian countries have also been allowing substantial imports of technology products that eventually find their way to Russia. The US has issued warnings to Kazakhstan and other mentioned countries by implementing secondary sanctions. For instance, it imposed sanctions on various entities in Kyrgyzstan due to their involvement in violating these sanctions. A key issue with the sanctions is that they're not consistently enforced, particularly when it comes to the price cap on Russian crude oil exports. This cap cap was introduced as an alternative to a complete energy embargo, which could have driven up energy prices. If the price cap is rigorously enforced and gradually reduced over time, it could gradually reduce the significant income Russia gains from oil sales. This reduction could, in turn, impact Russia's ability to fund the ongoing war, aligning with the original intention of the sanctions. To break it down, there's a cap on the price of Russian seaborne crude oil, meaning it can't be sold for more than $60 a barrel if it's transported using G7 tankers. However, the catch is that Russians need to prove this low price with a contract, but there's no requirement for the buyer to comply. Now here's where things get tricky. Investigators and journalists are pointing out that Russia might be getting around this price cap through shady deals with its oil buyers like India and China. Russia has a track record of faking documents and spreading false information, so cooking up a contract to match the price cap isn't a big deal for them. The concern is that, on paper, Russia could be selling its oil below the price cap, making it seem all legit. But in reality, the actual price might be higher. The buyers in this case stand to benefit because they could resell the oil at a higher price, especially to countries that have imposed sanctions on Russian energy. See, the current sanctions only target oil sold directly by Russia. Still, once it changes hands, the next buyer can resell the oil as if it's their own, pushing the price up and profiting from these potentially illegal dealings with the Russians. To make sure sanctions really hit the mark, Western governments need to step up their game and close the loopholes Russia might be sneaking through. It's not just about slapping Russia on the wrist, it's about going after the middlemen and international companies helping Russia get what it wants illegally. These enablers should feel their heat by being kept out of Western markets as a penalty for playing dirty. To keep a closer eye on things, European countries and the US should expand their teams dedicated to investigation and tracking of sanctions. This increased capacity would help in monitoring and implementing measures against those consistently breaking the rules. The resources and capability for such actions exist among the sanctioning states, and it's crucial for them to take decisive steps in this direction. And one more important thing is that the EU should learn how to live without Russian oil and gas. Tell us your thoughts in the comments section and hit the subscribe button. Thanks for watching.